Well, it's interesting. I think my panel focused on foreign policy, and I found it very interesting to hear the views of the European ministers and then the views of some of the outsiders, the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians. And the thing that struck me was that the Europeans were more pessimistic than the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians. I think the Europeans expressed some real doubts about the ability of common foreign policy to produce a common foreign policy. Some criticism of Lady Ashton as High Representative, and I think there was some real struggling among some of the European ministers to really see what's the way forward for that. Interestingly, I found that the Chinese and the Americans and the Russians were very enthusiastic about engaging with Ashton, with Van Rompuy, with that. And I think that perhaps if we look forward and what's next for Europe is your question, on a foreign policy perspective, I think it's just getting the structures right, but being more confident that there can be a common foreign policy if there's just a little bit more work done. To rely on the institutions and to rely on the structures in place and put some trust in that so there is a one voice on foreign policy. Now, I think everything always looks worse inside. I think, particularly, and this is, I think, one of the things also, think of what Europe looking forward needs to work on. I think Brussels in particular, but Europe as a whole, tends to look at itself a little bit too much. I don't think it's looking outside and thinking how we can affect the world, how we can impact the world. And I think from like any family, for instance, if you are in a family, you fight with your brother, you fight with your mother, but to the outside, you probably look like a very lovely family. And I think that's basically what happens in Europe on foreign policy. From the inside, it looks very angry and lots of strife. Or from the outside, I think people are seeing an increasing unity, increasing voice on international affairs, and I think that reflected in the panel we had today. Voila? Okay.